Good. Okay, our meeting is now streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube. We are in our 39th episode. Emily Harris and I are upstate at our place in the Catskills. Margaret, our collaborator and board member, is in Amsterdam. And there's Kristen McIver, our guest today, our tuning fork today. So we're really lucky to have Kristen with us, and this is pretty exciting. Chow, how are you doing? Hello. Chow was with us
Good.
a couple of shows ago, 37, I guess, 36. And our 40th show is going to be with Tenzin Chogyal in a few weeks, the Tibetan singer, composer, activist. We'll talk more about that toward the end of the show. Greetings, Babette in Amsterdam, and Eugene Pendon in Montreal. So we'll get started, Kristen. How are you feeling, Kristen?
Great, thank you. It's nice to be on the show. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. It's great to be in such amazing company, and looking forward to our chat.
Oh, Kristen, we're so lucky that you can be with us, and you've been so busy. There's Heather. Hey, Heather, we're sorry we missed you during your stay in America, but we'll catch up soon. Yeah, thank you. And meet Kristen McIver.
Hello.
Yeah. So, Kristen, it looks like you've been like super busy over the last 10 years or so. Yeah. And I'm just curious, what was this proclivity about to work in the visual arts? How did that sort of arise in your youth?
I've always been, from growing up as a child, my parents always, while not being artists themselves, always had a great interest in the arts, and always took us to galleries and shows. I always had a love for it, and I went to very artistic schools and so on, and it was always something I did. I studied graphic design initially, and my first job out of college was as a web designer in the original .com boom when they were just hiring anyone who knew anything about web codes or design. So I sort of learnt to code by hand from the days of HTML when there were only 8 colors, I think, you could use on the internet, and the page weight had to be 50K. So I've been sort of working with technology and art and design ever since, pretty much my whole life. But I always felt a little bit frustrated, and just working with clients and corporations, and working in that sector. And I decided after an injury that I wanted to really get back into the art more. So I actually did a master's in fine art. And really from there, I just sort of really loved it and decided that's what I want to do full time. Not that I'm doing it full time, still have my other job to support myself. So, so alongside my artwork, I still do website design. So I always have this interest of code and algorithms, and the systems that drive the internet and the media and the things that we view today, pretty much all our systems. So having that work alongside, I think, has actually helped my practice.
Sure. And by the way, Emily, our producer, created a program here, so we're really excited to go into a few different topics. And one of them, right, Em, is the idea of course, talking about your digital sort of, familiarity with the virtual world and the digital space. And you've learned, I guess, how to manipulate even artificial intelligence programs, facial recognition in your work, and produced a number of installations and such. People are pouring in here. I just want to say again, hello, Beth in Amsterdam. Really happy that you're here, and I missed you. And I got a new hip in the meantime. So pardon me for being so intimate. Anyway, um, uh, what was it about text that seemed to, merge in your work? What was it? When I think of, when I first saw your work, Kristen, we met under sort of casual circumstances in the Ear Inn, right, Em? The Ear Inn, it says ear outside in neon, but that's because they blacked out the curvy parts of the letter B, which used to be what would be bar, right? So it's the Ear Inn, and we met at the Ear Inn. I used to frequent that place in the early 70s, and Charlie Morrow lives above the Ear Inn and one of the co-owners. So it's an interesting context to have met you and your friend. Was it Melissa?
Yes, Melissa Amore, a fabulous writer and curator.
Yeah, and we do seem to have so many friends in common and coincidental kinds of community contacts. That's so interesting. So that community is a big part of our show, of course, and as is the corporate narrative and the notions of a self or the illusion of self as dictated by the industrial sort of commodity world. And you worked with these things. And when I first saw your text work, I went kind of crazy because to me that's so exciting, text in a visual work. So one thinks of right away This Beautiful Day, which is one of your spectacular I call them billboards, not billboard, it's sort of billboard idiom, but there's a large neon powered message and solar powered on the side of a mountain. And I think of the Hollywood, of course, and your implication that the environment then becomes part of the work. So This Beautiful Day obviously references the day where this is occurring and what is occurring around. We're gonna see that image. There it is, This Beautiful Day. So can you just give us a little story or background about how text became central to your work?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was always very interested in the language of advertising, which also led into social media and television advertising, advertisements in magazines and so on, and that aspirational aspect that led, they're really selling an idea. They're not actually selling an object. They're selling an idea, and as the viewer of the ad or whatever, artists like Barbara Kruger touched on this a lot. When there's an ad that's saying I or you, for example, as the viewer or the potential consumer, you identify with that idea. And with that, in doing so, you identify with the product. So you're really identifying with, this ideal or this aspirational. So,
Kristen, I'm going to rudely interrupt you sometimes because as when we spoke on Saturday, I kind of interrupted you several times. So please forgive me, everyone. But what do you mean by identify? What is identify? What are the dynamics of identifying? You mean you see yourself in it, or you associate your identity with it?
You identify as the I that is being called upon. It's a process called interpolation, and you actually identify as the I. So when someone puts out a message like that, they are calling out to those people receptive to it. And so when you see that aspirational image, you're already identifying as part of that ideal, essentially. So really the product is just something that, then I'm going to become this person. Cindy Sherman is another person, artist, who did this very well with her film stills series, where she created these characters, which were, fictional characters from fictional films that didn't actually exist. So she recreated these stereotypes, and these stereotypes are based on not real people at all, but however we all identify with that, the starry-eyed, actress who's just arrived in New York or so on. So it's that idea of presenting something that is not real, and however, as, someone with an ego or someone with an aspiration, we're going to identify with that and we want to become that person.
It's also this sort of illusion that you're becoming part of a group, that you're not alone. You are
exactly, yeah.
You know, and
you have a family, you have a tribe of similar
yeah,
minded
which
people.
seems
We'll
so.
touch on that later, where social media comes into play and how the algorithms sort of play on that too.
And it's such a disease of our time, or a symptom of our time. Now, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, let's say post 2016 phenomena of, people grouping into, divisive and divided communities. People tending to flock to the cult, the sect, the community. Is this something that you're conscious of when you're creating these sorts of anti-meifications, or what?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, so I guess, advances in technology and in advertising and the media has changed so much with the advancement of social media as probably the preferred form of advertising. It's like we're actually being sold to without even realizing it. But what's become particularly apparent in recent years, especially, for example, with the recent Trump election, the election fraud scandal, where Trump perpetuated these lies, and on these social media networks in very enclosed bubbles, people felt that identification as well. So they felt like they were part of a tribe, part of someone with a similar point of view, for example. And I wanted to test this theory out during this, I guess, in that period when the election hadn't been decided yet and Trump was really pushing these lies, and, Fox News and the media were perpetuating them. I set up a fake Instagram account, which I thought was disconnected from my own, and I just wanted to, start afresh. I put an American flag as my profile picture. I followed Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and the NRA, and then just followed the prompts from there. So I wanted to sort of get outside my own bubble, which has been formed by algorithmic processes, and see what is going on in the mindset of the, the right.
Can you just slow down a little for the uninitiated, like me and maybe Emily? I don't know, but you intentionally created this kind of fake ID, a fake identity.
Yeah.
And you had in the back of your mind, or in the front of your mind, the idea of the algorithm.
Correct.
What was the algorithmic expectation you had? What was the performance you expected, or that you learned by doing this?
Well, with my knowledge of how these algorithms work, and because I've been paying attention to it over a long time with my practice. Even you'll notice it day to day, just as a casual user of Facebook or Instagram, for example, the friend suggestions, or you might like this, or you might like this article. They're based on your behavior, but also that of your friends and your network. And that is all guided by algorithms, which are, nobody knows exactly, other than Meta or Facebook, how these algorithms work, but we have enough knowledge that we can start to manipulate them. So I wanted.
Well, you do.
Yes, I have some background knowledge, but also as a casual user, you can sort of start to see how, just by observing the patterns of what information you are fed on Facebook or Instagram. Out of your, 500 to 1,000 people you follow, you generally only see about 25. You see posts from about 25 people. So again, that becomes this, somewhat dangerous bubble, because you're only seeing repeated information from the same set of people. You're not allowing any room for other, chance ideas or, anything outside your own current ideals. So with this knowledge in hand, I created this account, and I just wanted
you created, then, just for a few people who just joined in, you created a kind of pro-MAGA ID, an identity.
An identity, yes.
Was it? Did you begin on Instagram or Facebook, or where did you begin?
I confined it to Instagram because I didn't want to go too far with it, which, as I'll explain later, actually did become a problem for me. But I just wanted to, I didn't post anything. I just wanted to observe and just to understand how this sort of such extreme, you know, I call it fanaticism, comes about. And it's because really, like, there's more media perpetuating, you know, lies, and then, you know, everyone just starts, you know, saying the same thing, even though there's not a shred of evidence to prove this false information. My entire feed was filled with, you know, we've got to get ready for war, all this stuff, you know, just like the NRA is like spouting all these scary things. And it was really just interesting to observe just how different this feed was to mine. And if that's all you're seeing, then you're going to become more and more extreme. And I think
did you tell any of your friends that you were doing this?
I didn't. I just sort of did it in my own bubble. But then, as it turned out, a friend of mine, I didn't think it was linked to my own account. It turns out it was. Well, it came up on one of my friends' accounts, who happens to be African American, and she's like, "Oh, is this you?" Because it came up on her feed as people you may know. So then it started to infiltrate into my circle, which is, you know, obviously mostly left-leaning politically. But and so then I started to realize I can't really continue this, because then I'm going to have people hating me. a lot of my friends are going to think I'm some infiltrating secret.
Okay. Well, look, here's the deal. Here's what's interesting. I'm sort of damn interested to know, like, can we manipulate the algorithm? And can we do it, let's say, as cultural activists? But can we manipulate the algorithm? Is such a thing possible, even with a small population of people, maybe let's say 1,000 artists or 1,000 friends decide to manipulate the algorithm? Is that something that we can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I mean, I didn't post anything on this feed, but I ended up with probably about 200 followers despite that fact. So if I started to then post some alternative views, who knows what would happen? It would be interesting. However, one case in point with this, and I explained this the other day in the movie The Great Hack. It went into detail about, again, Trump and how he manipulated when he first got into power.
Okay, we started to watch The Great Hack again last night.
Yeah.
We had seen it during the lockdown, and for some amazing reason, we didn't remember that we had seen it until we were sort of in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And that night I went out on an excursion that was a little bit weird. Anyway, so and tell us, this is a film called The Great Hack. It's a documentary.
Yes. And it goes into detail about the presidential election in what year was that, when Trump was actually elected?
16, right?
16, yes. And how he worked with the Russians, and this all came out later, of course, but he worked with the Russians and a team from Facebook. I'm not sure whether it was within Facebook or they set up an office, about 25 people, and they had identified that all they needed was to turn the one state which would give him power. They needed 50,000 votes to be turned from people who were on the fence, just to swing them over to the right. So they did this whole campaign using Facebook and using the algorithms to do exactly that. And they did, and they were able to convert these people who were neither left nor right leaning, and that was all they needed to just, finally swing it their way. So, I mean, if they can do it, then, I mean, I'm sure we can. If we can harness the power of social media, advertising. I mean, I've worked in that too, so I understand how that all works too. But if we can harness the algorithm that way that other people do, then surely we can create change.
Okay. Now, Emily, was this something you wanted to talk with Kristen about in terms of text or word or?
I was thinking maybe we should show the digital portrait series.
Okay, and then we'll come back. How about it? And we come back to the Vancouver experience and the Squamish community.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go with that, Em.
Okay.
So tell us what we're seeing now, Kristen. And thanks again, everyone, for being with us. It's just really a great evening to be together with Kristen.
Well, thanks for joining, everyone. So yeah, this is a series that I call Data Portraits. And they are actually portraits which are derived from face recognition data. So while they don't look like faces, they're not pixelated faces. They're actually, I guess, generative artworks that I created I wrote a simple algorithm, and I created a palette of 10 colors, which was, I guess, borrowed from an Andy Warhol Marilyn portrait, because I was looking at the idea of, social media being, creating these new forms of celebrity. And I feel like Andy Warhol would be very interested in, and I'm sure he would utilize, social media and the current tools to great effect today.
Well, are you Andy Warhol reincarnated?
Possibly.
Are you channel Andy Warhol virtually somehow?
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, you program your own AI with Andy's content?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, I mean that's the beauty with AI. We can start to use that in a way to manipulate.
So you added these, let's say, conditions or criteria into an AI program and facial recognition, right? You gave it colors, and
so I set the parameters. So I set the color palette, and I wrote the algorithm, which is going to basically, form the composition. And then whichever face recognition data set that I fed into the algorithm would determine the order of the colors, essentially. So each one is completely unique because it's derived from face recognition data from my subject's Facebook account, which they would kindly go into the system and download for me. Some people were obviously wary, didn't want to do that. Other people were very interested to see it. Other people had their privacy settings very high, which is why you see these grey pieces here. So they're essentially people who exist within Facebook that I call them ghosts, because they can't be tracked because they don't have their face recognition data enabled.
You know what, Kristen? They're a bit like the people here in this Zoom meeting.
Yes, the anonymous ghosts.
Anonymous. We know that they're there.
Hello to all you guys.
And lots of love. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea of when you see photos of people and everyone's tagged, but there are these people who exist in there, but they're not tagged. So I kind of like that idea that they're sort of ghosts floating around. So potentially another way to infiltrate the system from within, or just from using it. So basically, once the face recognition data is fed through, I'll receive the order in which to paint it, and then I will manually paint it. So it sort of goes through from a human factor through a digital filter and then back to a human execution. So I actually hand paint meticulously each square. So it sort of becomes, they look at first glance like geometric abstraction. However, they are, they contain that they have a data and an algorithm generating their content.
And where were these works were shown recently with Warhol and other artists? Where was that? Which museum?
At the Beckler Museum in Charlotte. I was lucky enough to show these works alongside the very Marilyn portraits from which they were referencing. So this was it was called Pop to Now, and it was looking at Warhol's legacy, from pop art through to NFTs. So mine sat somewhere in the middle as we started to look at technology. And in fact, the process that I use for this, and I've been doing this since about 2016, these data portraits, it's very similar to the process that now goes into the creation of NFTs. They use a similar process where they feed in the transaction ID. Certain NFTs, only generative NFTs do this, and I find them actually quite interesting. So when the transaction happens, it's a similar process. The parameters of these works are defined, and an algorithm is written. And then once the transaction happens, the transaction ID is the thing that will generate the artwork. So make it come to life. So in a similar process to how I do these data portraits.
Now, Margaret Vidmer, our partner and board member for the Institute for Cultural Activism, mentions they also look kind of like QR codes. And we've been working with QR codes as well. So any spillover for you into QR?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely have that. And it's because of what is seemingly randomness, I guess, because you get these repeated colors, repeated shapes. And I've used this same process in various media. So I've created sound works. I've created film. Poetry, yeah. So in a similar way, so sometimes you look at them, they just look like a beautiful poem, but then you might see the same word repeated 3 times, or in the film, you might see the same scene repeated over and over. So you sort of, and as a viewer, you sort of, it's a similar process. You start to identify and form your own narrative, because your own perception starts to inform the work as well. So the work becomes a prompt as well.
Somehow the curator for the show knew that you were basing these on Marilyn somehow.
Yeah, so I think actually, funnily enough, William, who you met the other day, he manages a large collection of works, including quite a few Warhol pieces. And I've worked with him on several projects. And when the curators of the Pop to Now exhibition went to borrow, because they loaned some of the works from his collection, William had learned about the show and thought that my work might fit quite nicely in between the two, the pop through to the NFTs. And so yeah, it sort of came about through the Marilyns.
and you're referencing William, whose project with other colleagues is re-cited, re-cited.org, in case anyone wants to follow up on that fractal or
rabbit hole. Yes.
Yeah. No. What is? I'm sorry.
A very rewarding rabbit hole. She decided to go down this.
A good rabbit hole where lots of rabbits are hanging out, keeping each other warm.
Yes.
So Emily just posted that in the chat for those who are a bit ADD and want to look somewhere else for a minute. Anyway, what do we have here? A digital.
This was actually my first data work. I did that in upstate New York at Arto Meyer residency, which is in Ghent, just like 10 minutes outside of Hudson. And again, it uses the same process that I used for the data portraits, yet instead of a palette of 10 colors, I used a palette of 10 wildflowers. So each was a local wildflower. I came all the way from Australia to do this residency, so I didn't want to bring a whole lot of materials, and I didn't want to take a lot of things back. So I wanted to create a work that was derived on site and would continue on site as well. So so I like that idea of creating a garden bed that was also derived from an algorithm. So it has this nice symbiosis between nature and data and human. It requires a human to tend it and so on. So while I like the idea of NFTs and the complete automation of these artworks, I quite like the fact that they do require a human input to create in their creation as well. So it becomes a bit more like a collaboration between a human and an algorithm. The reason I choose to go this way is because I feel that is how we tend to operate in our current state of being as we engage with the media, because algorithms currently, they inform pretty much every aspect of our life, from our knowledge, from our dating to our friendship circles, from our political allegiances and so on. Every time we feed these algorithms, they become smarter, and then they in turn shape us, as we said before. So this sort of relationship, I guess, that starts to occur as we sort of rely on each other. So one example I always go back to is the selfie photograph did not exist before the front-facing camera. That piece of technology created a whole phenomenon, and which has become more than just a medium. It's become a social phenomenon. It's created whole industries. It's, of influencers, and for better or worse. However, that idea of, an arm's length selfie photograph has become quite ubiquitous in our culture. So, and then again, that's just an example of us creating technology, and then we evolve as the technology evolves as well.
So what we're looking at are who are these people? It looks like some sort of a conspiracy group.
That's the next generation of conspirators, so we need to enlist. So these are a group of students. I had the pleasure of teaching some art workshops too at a MS 136 in Sunset Park. So I worked with Ayelet El-Dubi from Residency Unlimited. We worked on this project over a series of 4 years and at various schools and community centres around New York City, and taken the idea of the data portraits and that process into the classroom, where we would, through the creation of these data portraits, so each student was able to create their very own personal data portrait. So we took selfies, and they all loved that. That was a great fun part for them. And then we went through the process with face recognition data and then creating the paintings. And then the students sort of felt such a great sense of ownership over it because it was their own identity. But through the process, they also learnt about privacy and social media, and very important things for adolescents to learn as they navigate the world through, these channels, just to sort of make them aware of the footprint that they leave behind every time they engage on social media.
Now, the other day, Emily mentioned that you and she are pretty much just a couple of years apart in age, and your generation sort of grew up, before all this digital phenomena exploded into the marketplace and social media, et cetera. I forgot now where I'm going with that, but it's as though you're empowering these young people to see beyond or deeper than the surface of the screen.
Exactly.
What it is that might be defining their identities.
Exactly. And that's interesting you mentioned that. One of my key theorists that I love is Lev Manovich, and he talked about the layer behind the screen, which is very important to understand, because we look at much of the world through the screen these days. Here we are meeting together via a screen. The pandemic really, created a world where we become even more accustomed to viewing the screen. But behind that screen is a series of code and algorithms that is not only serving information to us, but it's also gathering information at the same time. And I think it's very important for these kids to understand that.
Well, if you don't mind me saying, the tuning fork evolved out of what we felt was a necessity for actual a cultural community that wanted to have an impact on the transformation of society, the tuning fork. And the Jane Lombard Gallery is joining. Welcome to the Jane Lombard Gallery, where we actually met Kristen the other day at her exhibition. Here, Waves Crashing, One Embrace into Infinite Waves was at the Lombard Gallery. And we met Kristen the other day there in New York on Saturday. Now tell us, this is one example of an algorithmic work. What is that? This is
a work, it's an excerpt from a data poem. So I briefly mentioned that earlier. So again, using the same process that I use for the data portraits. Again, instead of a palette of colors, I use a palette of words, essentially, that I derive. I get a body of text from the internet. So I use found text In this case, it was about water because it was part of a larger exhibition, with water being the prominent theme. And I remixed the words essentially using an algorithm to create a new poem, a new body of work, a new text. And, again, it has that same idea where some elements feel so human and so emotive, and then other lines are very jarring, which sort of belie and reveal, I guess, the algorithmic sources under it. I don't like to be too obvious, the fact that it's derived from an algorithm, but sometimes just the inclusion of a repeated word, or sometimes in the title, I'll refer to that.
Kristen, can we go back to Vancouver, and Emily, perhaps go into this beautiful day and the contact with the Squamish community and the idea of connecting in a very tactile, tangible way with the environment. Tell us about this contact at the Vancouver Biennale that you had.
Yeah, I did a residency with the Vancouver Biennale. I think that was 2015. It has been a busy few years. And I worked during this 6 weeks up in Squamish, which is just north of Vancouver, in a beautiful, incredible landscape. I was lucky enough to engage with the Squamish First Nations up there, and became dear friends with Saweja Spakwas, who's one of the elders of the Squamish Nation there. And I was lucky enough to partake in a lot of ceremonies and canoe pulls, and also, I was able to, participate with Saweja when she was gathering bark for her. She weaves baskets and headwear and so on. And so I went into the forest, and, I was helping her gather bark. And what I found so beautiful about the process was there was always an acknowledgement before, taking anything from the tree, to thank the tree and thank the creator for, the beautiful day and for providing the tree. And that she would only take as much as she needed that would not harm the tree. And so we would go around and, collect bark from a number of trees, but only a small amount. And each time there was just this acknowledgement. And also before each ceremony, or really any communal gathering, there was first and foremost an acknowledgement. And it usually started along the lines of thank you to the creator for this beautiful day. Thank you all for being here, etc. And I just like that acknowledgement each time of the environment first and foremost, and humans being really a participant and a part of the system, rather than, in the culture as we know it in the West, this domineering idea that we have. So it was just such a nice, simple, humbling experience, I guess.
Tell us what we're seeing here.
That's Saweja there, Saweja Spakwas. We went on a canoe pull with a number of the members of the community, and it was actually to bless a part of the land. It was really just a way for the community to get together, and then we had a feast afterwards and so on. Do
you mind me asking, Kristen, as you see this material on screen and as you're describing it, how does it make you feel?
It takes me back to a wonderful time. Living in New York, it's so hectic, and it's so such a different way of life, which is so beautiful and simple and rewarding. And the community there is very strong. And it also linked back to, the idea of language became a big part of this work as well, because one of the challenges that the community has is the loss of their languages, because this region alone in British Columbia, there's, I think, something like 120 languages. There were originally 120 languages, of which only, I think there are 20, there's maybe 40 dormant languages, and then maybe 20 with active speakers. So
what I found, yeah. So that you said there are only 10 native fluent speakers, actually.
Exactly, of which Saweja is one of those. And so what they're really, trying to do is to document it as, get everyone together and document it, because unfortunately the younger generation doesn't seem as interested in carrying it forward. So it's really integral and very important work that she's doing.
So this is right at the edge of extinction.
Exactly, yeah. So sorry that they're in a process of putting together a dictionary and to preserve that language.
What was very evocative to me the other day was, as you mentioned, before you cut the bark of a tree, there's this sort of acknowledgement, this beautiful day, this beautiful tree, this, sort of generative, nurturing environment where we are co-inhabitants.
Yeah.
And that is a very contemplative method of becoming mindful. That you enter the here and now, and in the here and now you connect beyond your own self-image. You actually connect with this greater space and interconnectivity with nature and all beings. Exactly. So I found that such the way you conveyed it to us was very sort of poignant. And is there something that you carry with you from that experience when you, let's say, go to the ocean to tell us a little bit about your own, inner practice?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always found that, the natural environment, firstly, but particularly water, holds a very special place for me, and it's where I always go if I need to meditate or feel like I just need space or to clear my head or whatever. Water is a big part of me growing up in Australia, I guess, as well, because we're surrounded by water. It's always part of life. It's where I go to think. If I'm doing research, for example, I'll spend all the time in the studio banging my head against the wall. But then when I will go down to the East River in New York, sit there, and then within 5 minutes, I have an idea. Everything comes together. There's something freeing about the movement of water and the motion. I guess we're very connected to water as well. Water carries a lot of history. It's been, moving around the system forever, essentially, in a cycle, including through us. So we are actually part of that system.
There's so much water in our bodies. Without it, we wouldn't exist.
Exactly, yes.
Something that most people know, but fail to become cognizant of it in a tangible, tactile way. So there she is, huh?
Ron Daniels wrote something in the chat.
Thank you, Emily. What did he write?
Did you want to share, Ron? Ron is Indigenous from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Oh, wow. Welcome.
Yes, the offering, usually did they offer tobacco? Usually we offer tobacco, and that's by making an offering, she was thanking the tree for its sacrifice.
Yeah.
That it was giving a part of itself to her so she could make her basket. So it's a mutual understanding of our mutual relationship to each other. That's what the reason for their prayer.
I just wanted to say, Robin, it's so wonderful that you're there for us all the time. And just now from Georgia in Eastern Europe is Beggy. Just wave a hello, Beggy. Thanks for joining us. Must be like 11 or 12 p.m. over there. Look at that, in this capital city of Georgia. Thanks, Beggy. It's so great to have you. Where should we go from here, Emily? Oh, she's muted. You're muted.
Chris, would you like to share your large neon pieces in the environment? Or
yeah, I guess we can start. With this beautiful day was probably one of the more prominent ones of those, so part of that work was I wanted to create a work that had no footprint. It could exist as part of the environment without affecting the environment. So the reason for that was it was a solar powered piece. And it's called This Beautiful Day, and the medium for this work is neon steel batteries and a beautiful day. And with that, I guess it's sort of part of a series of works that I've done that really exist as more prompts than anything. With this work, the beautiful day itself powers the work. So the sun that powers the batteries powers the sign. And so it's like a symbiotic relationship. And then this work existed in Squamish, I think, for 4 years or so. And ironically, following the hashtag This Beautiful Day on Instagram, I was able to see the work. You know, people would take photos of it in selfies in front of it, of course, and but photograph the work in all manner of different weather conditions, including snowfall and rain and fog and springtime with blossoms around it, hot days. And so I was able to see the work exist in this range of different environments. And essentially, the work itself is actually just a prompt. And because it sort of encourages people to look at the work, but then look at the environment around them rather than the work. So the work sort of also becomes quite insignificant in a way. So yeah, I like that idea that the work just exists as a prompt to the viewer that then might change their day. So I would often watch people drive past when I was there, still in Vancouver. I'd watch people drive by and they'd actually see the work and then pull their car over, go and take their selfie and take a couple of photos. But then they would actually go and realize, oh, look, we'll go for a little walk along the river, for example. And again, so really what that work did, it became something that it really just activated the environment around it. So the work itself is sort of irrelevant in a way. It's not about the object, it's about what is happening around the work. And I've done that with quite a few different pieces.
Is that piece still there?
It is actually. After the 4 years was up, we were looking for a place to recite it, which is a bit of a challenge. It's a 26-foot neon sign. So we're looking around does anyone want to look after this neon? But then a developer moved into the area and they really wanted to engage artworks that have been produced in the area. So they ended up purchasing the work. And so it's actually going to stay right in front of the Squamish Chief, which is that beautiful mountain behind it, the rock formation. So it's actually going to stay where it was conceived, which I'm really happy about because it is such a part of that environment. And it also became part of the identity of the town, actually, of Squamish. The hashtag This Beautiful Day, if you look at it on Instagram, you'll see people posting it on their hikes around the mountains up there and so on. So it sort of became a part of the identity of the place, which is really, as an artist creating a public work, that's what you hope that it will, bring, some joy to the community and, become part of that environment in a good way.
Wow.
So yeah, this is another work. This was part of the Noosa Biennale actually in Australia. Noosa is another very beautiful area in Queensland. And this I created as one of the data pieces actually. So this is sort of an extension, but bringing in more of the algorithmic process. So again, I took from one of the water-based data poems. I took one of the phrases and blew it up as a neon sign.
So can I just barge in for a second, Kristen? I want to make it clear to anybody who didn't get it or just joined us recently that you understand how to do back channel work or whatever we're calling it, programming, and you worked with facial recognition with AI software yourself digitally, and you modified those programs and created visual images and poetry and films. Is that all correct?
Correct, yes. So I've actually been working with AI in recent months, since the ChatGPT came about, to help me to develop more complex algorithms. So again, I'm collaborating with the tools and the coding and the AI to create new codes. And so I've actually been able to collaborate with ChatGPT to recreate the artworks that I make. So now I want to work to see how much more complex I can make those algorithms. For example, if it says this word, then maybe you're going to be more likely to have certain words come afterwards rather than being quite primitive, which sometimes they are.
So the work that we just saw that Emily put up was also algorithmically created, the words.
Yeah, it's part of the same series of the work that was at Jane Lombard Gallery.
So there's this crazy contrast between this high-tech virtual world and the natural space, which makes the work sort of less object, the work becomes somehow less emphatic than the environment where it is. So you're there with the object in environment, or here in this virtual space looking at it, and you can't help but embrace the idea that your appreciation, the space where the object is sitting, are all part of the work. The materials that Kristen is working with are not just these concrete material things. She's working with the macrocosmic world of the natural environment and human beings, and the microcosmic world of the digital space and virtual reality. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good summary.
doing my best.
So yeah, while they can at first glance appear, just as a nice poetry or something, there's a lot of complex layers that go into these works. But I like if the viewer encounters it and just sees it, or just goes for a walk along the beach. As a result, I'm happy, that as an artist, that's, people can take from these works whatever they like, or whatever they, bring from their experience when they encounter the work.
How did the Squamish community sort of react or relate to what you did this beautiful day? How did they?
They really enjoyed the work, actually, and because I did a lot of consulting with them before we put it up as well, because I wanted to make sure that they were happy as well. So I met with all the elders in Squamish, and they really appreciated the work, actually, and the thoughtfulness that went into it.
What's happening now, by the way?
Now I've actually, as you said, I was very busy the last few years leading up to the pandemic, and I've actually enjoyed being a little slower pace. I think the pandemic kind of made me appreciate having a little more time and to sort of really, think about what the next step is and the next pivot. I'm going to continue the Impression series. So those neon works that you saw, the data-generated ones, were part of a 3-part series, which included neon, video, and sculpture. But using the data sets that were fed into this one were actually climate data. So each one has a bit of a, I guess, a theme of climate change around a certain element. So water being the first one. The next one is going to be Earth, which is going to be set in LA. And then the third one is going to be fire, which is going to be set in Australia. So they'll use similar processes, but thematically they'll be, around different elements, but, quite linked as well. As you saw with the piece at Jane Lombard Gallery, there's already some rocks appearing below. So I think that might lead into the next show in LA, which will focus more on the earth and rocks and the earthiness.
I just wanted to screen share this video. Where are you?
Does this relate to what you were speaking about, Kristen?
Yes, that's correct. So this was the first iteration of that work that you saw previously, the neon piece on the wall. There were some rocks elsewhere in the gallery. So that was a second showing of that work, but it sort of evolved as it moved into a different space, which my works are quite site-specific like that. So this work involved video work. So this is a video sculpture. It looks like a sort of very minimalist acrylic sculpture, and then embedded within it is a moving video of various water in various states. So this is actually steam, and there were snowflakes, there were waterfalls in different undulating bodies of water. And then
how does one encounter the work when you're in the white space, the white box of a gallery? You walk up to it. What is it?
Yeah, if you go back to that previous screen, Emily, they're the works, they're those sculptures. So they actually look like a clear cube. And you don't really see anything until you look from above. So when you first encounter them, they just seem like very minimalist sculptures. But then once you view from the angle, there's sort of like this prismatic effect that happens. So then you just see, only floating on the top surface, you see this moving image.
That's actually a video image that's somehow floating in the top of the
floating
box.
on the top surface, yes. Wow. So there's some quite technical things going on to conceal the source of the video and so on. So it's sort of encapsulating the water in this way. And then as a counterpoint to that, I have these very large scale full room or full wall installations, which again have a mirror placed beneath them. So to sort of reflect what's going on in the sculptures. As the larger installation works, you start to see at the corners, this happens with the sculptures too, in the corners you start to see, the repetition of the image, and then you start to see the waves in more abstract form. The image starts to get broken up and you start to see it as patterns at that juncture where the two images meet.
Em, do you mind if I run a video here?
Sure. There were also a couple of questions in the chat.
Well, yeah, let's come back to questions in about 2 minutes. How about that? Can everyone just hold up for a sec? Okay, Kristen, talk about it.
Yes, so this was also part of the Impressions exhibition. It was a work I filmed in Curacao. And this is one of the data films that I mentioned earlier. So I filmed a series of clips with a loose narrative in mind. And then I fed through the algorithm, and the algorithm formatted them into somewhat of an artificial narrative. So again, you sort of have the same scene will repeat over and over, or, all of a sudden she'll be walking backwards or forwards. And so the viewer starts to create their own narrative as they view this. So again, it's a collaboration between myself and the algorithm. So we're gone and filmed the clips and then threaded them together with this algorithm. And I have another film I'm working on at the moment based on my experience during the pandemic as well, which is going to have multiple threads and multiple storylines being threaded together by the algorithm. So each time you'll see there's going to be lots of different versions of this film based on the narrative or the data that's fed into it.
You have something there, Em? More of those?
Okay. I have a couple of questions.
Far away.
Margaret was curious to know if those prismatic sculptures on the columns, could you pick those up and hold them?
No, they are quite well embedded into the base of the sculpture because that's where the video is and all the electronics are. embedded in that. So if you pick them up, you'll just have a clear cube. You could pick it up, but some of the magic will be lost.
And then Daniel was curious to know, what is the source of the video in the sculptures?
The source of the video are actually areas that are have a personal significance to me. And each one of those, the titles of those works are a geotag location. So if you wanted to go, you can look it up. You can look them up. You can look up the titles. You can actually type them into Google Maps and see the exact location of where they were shot too.
What would be an example of one of the algorithmic films?
So the one we just viewed, The Edge, with the water, and there's another one that I think I sent earlier called The Divided Line.
Let's just quickly look at The Divided Line.
Yeah, so this is another installation. And this one was along that time when I was had the fake Instagram account. This was in the lead up to calling the election. So 2 weeks after the election, when we were still in that zone of not knowing who had won officially, when most of Soho was boarded up and most of Manhattan was boarded up in anticipation of, more protests and more riots, etc. So I shot this film during that week when everything, that was down in Soho. So all the stores were boarded up. So you got this sort of beautiful architecture and then this very crude plywood put over the top. And so the data fed into this one is actually the live election results, because it was sort of swinging back and forward all the time. So hence the name Divided Line, but it also referencing the divisions in politics and the further polarization. So again, you had this, the female protagonist who is sort of like this tension of just waiting and sort of going back and forward without sort of reaching any conclusion. So I wanted to keep that tension there, because it was sort of produced while we were in that limbo. Pretty wild time in New York with all the, it happened a couple of times when all the shops were boarded up during the pandemic. The first time obviously being during the Black Lives Matter movement. I spent a lot of time actually riding my bike around and taking a lot of photographs of the city during that time. So I'm probably going to feed that into some work later on too, some more work.
Now, as we go into our, sort of audience interactivity with you, Margaret, I think wanted to lead off with a comment or a question. Am I right, Margaret?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a question, Christine, but you completely changed my mind on algorithms. I just fell in love with algorithms just while you were talking, because when I was looking a little bit into your work before the show, I was thinking about because I and I'm sure a lot of people probably experience, algorithms and the whole, the way that the web is controlled and the way that social media is controlled, artists not being able to post what they want to post, there's lots of restrictions. Yeah. So I was thinking about, is it possible to create kind of like a rhizomatic, like a net in the underground that we can all communicate together in the underground? So I was more thinking about, I was also looking into the dark web and what would that be like? Would that be like going into dangerous alleys and, like artists always like being the first ones to move into the dangerous areas before it all becomes, gentrified again.
Yes, but the gentrified dark web. Yeah, I wonder what that'll look like.
Yeah, exactly. But looking at your work, it's like it's so interesting. It's as if you take everything to the surface. I mean, it becomes very light already, like with the with the geometric works. I was thinking like, is this going towards a new wave of minimalism?
Yeah.
It's yeah, and yeah, it's really interesting. Also, you at some point you mentioned no chance, but actually, the way that you work, there is a lot of chance encounters, right?
There's a lot, yeah. Like with any of these works, I really don't know what they're going to look like until, for example, the paintings, until I paint the final square and take off the tape. I don't know what it's going to actually look like. And some of them obviously have a really beautiful composition, and others, it's very much chance based. So, and I like that. And some, they have different, because depending on the string of data, they vary in length. So that's why you see along the bottom, there's an empty grey square or rectangle. That's basically, some fill up the entire canvas. Others only have one square on the bottom row. So there is a element of chance that I find. And I sort of always reference back to people like Sol LeWitt, or John Cage or Hannah Derboven, who work with mathematics and instructional parameters. And for example, I'm thinking of Sol LeWitt's wall drawings. The actual artwork is a set of instructions. It could be like horizontal lines alternating between red and blue in a configuration of 4. And then depending on whoever installs the work, their interpretation then leads to the outcome. So I like that idea of chance and a non-fixed narrative or a non-fixed composition that might depend on who executes the work or who views the work.
You did a work like that, it seems like, with this, was it the World Trade thing of when, or was it some kind of portraiture, face left, it was like a way of creating a selfie. I don't know what it was.
Oh yeah, that was a work I did. It's actually part of my my MFA thesis, which was called You and Me, Models of Self-Representation in the Age of Social Media. And it was, this was sort of when we're talking about 2014 now, so Instagram was really taking off, but it wasn't even what it is now. Like now Instagram's sort of, it's become something else now. But it was sort of looking back at those sort of stereotypes that I guess users will sort of inhabit those stereotypes. So wherever these stereotypes come from, the person who interpolates with that stereotype, they sort of begin to inhabit that. And then what you see with selfies is they will then start to mimic that. So these were sort of a set of instructions for the selfie from an observational standpoint, or from the idea of like a film script. It was written in the style of a film script.
I just want to offer a comment from Heather Ackroyd, unless Heather wants to say herself, but maybe I'll just read it and Heather can take over if she wants to. We evolve as technology evolves, in quotes. How do you perceive human evolution in response to this? What is your intuition on future human tech evolution? Thanks, Heather.
Well, yeah, I think it's a very good point. And I think it is a relationship that we have with technology, and we do have, we are the creators essentially, so we should have the power to control it. But I feel like we definitely evolve as our technology evolves. Look at us now, chatting together from all around the world. So it's definitely, there's some incredible benefits to the technology, and we definitely adapt and evolve. The AI is obviously the next big thing, of the next probably evolution, revolution, all of the above. And the scary part about AI, and I think it could be incredibly advantageous for the human race, but it also is quite scary because it's in the hands of corporations. And if we only need to look at how quickly Google and Facebook and Microsoft are all trying to rush to market to be the first with the biggest product to market that makes it consumer friendly. They're rushing into this without really developing it. The reviewers have been looking at the current tools, and they're literally saying it's not ready because it's producing some, at times, quite scary outcomes. You can ask the AI chatbots anything. People have been asking, if I wanted to do a terrorist attack, what would be some ways to do it? And ChatGPT will come with this beautiful, 300 words about different options and where you can buy things. So it's it's sort of not really ready to, be tested on a, full scale at market as yet. So this is sort of the first time it's sort of been, launched into the world beyond its sort of testing, the confines of its testing
right.
group to the wider public. And some of the results are a little scary.
By the way, no pressure here, but a few folks flipped on their video element so that they can be seen. And that might mean that they want to say something or ask something. And we do have enough time to enjoy more interactivity. I just had one question here myself, which I include in the description that we sent out through email and social media. So my question to Kristen, in these opportunistically divided and unsettling times, in our blind desire to solidify a self in virtual space and social media, by participating in the corporate narrative and algorithmic commodification, are we diminishing identity, freedom, and autonomy?
I think absolutely we are. I mean, you only need to look at the selfie as a model of, what people aspire to be. And that is actually then informing how people present themselves, and now there's a trend of plastic surgery for people to get the selfie face. So they're actually, again, sort of changing their identity to now form something that's not even real in terms of physicality, but also their identification with this as well. Because there's also that idea of, the idea of knowing that you're constantly being surveilled. It's the panopticon effect, where you know that there's always eyes on you, so you're going to behave in a certain way. If you're in a private space, you behave in a certain way. If you're in a public space, you behave in a certain way. And because more and more so we are always in a public space, there's definitely a change in, the way we identify with the world and also with who we are.
I have to say, Kristen, that I admire so much the spirit of how you work. You have this fierce attitude that if there's poison, I want to understand it. If there's poison, I want to work with it. I want to transform it. I want to use it to empower people to understand the poison, and to perhaps explore what we call not necessarily remedies, but remedies, using the poison as a remedy, as an almost homeopathic cure, or this idea of antidote. That you enter the system and transform the system with a different motivation than the system was created for. So I find this is a very potent and a gravitational pull for us to work together. That's why we're here in the Institute for Cultural Activism, to evoke this kind of interactivity and networking and working. Perhaps, would you consider, Heather, teaching us a little bit how to work with AI, giving us a little workshop for our, the internal group here, for example, one day? And shall we all create, some fake identities and try to tilt the AI in another direction? So I think some of these things are certainly implied in your pioneering work. And Emily and I, and Margaret, we really very, very deeply moved and behind you. It's like a page out of our playbook that we didn't know was there.
Yes, well, definitely. And I think, as you said, the medium lends itself well, if we can understand it and utilize it in a way that it wasn't intended to be used, it's a good way to sort of get under the radar. And, you know, you can affect change. You can actually manipulate the algorithms. One simple example I mentioned the other day is like, if you're looking for something, new bed sheets, for example, I'll just type it into Google now and I know I'm going to get ads served to me for bed sheets. That's just a simple example of how you can use the algorithm, which is actually there to, you know, sell you advertising essentially and collect your data at the same time.
Well, delightfully, we have about 13 more minutes according to our, you know, form. Yep. And I just want to also acknowledge that there's enormous talent here in this Zoom meeting tonight. Extraordinary, exceptional people doing really, you know, breaking work. And it's just so exhilarating and tingling in my body to just say these words without really breaking down, crying with humility. I'm so touched by everyone's presence here. Thank you so much. So please feel free. And thanks again, Kristen, for, you know, enabling this tuning fork, resonating, you know, jolt that you're giving us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the great conversation.
Everyone, please feel free to speak at will.
I just want to say good evening to everyone as well. And seeing some of you again, which is a pleasure. And Kristen is so advanced. I mean, I managed to follow quite a bit of it because I'm playing with some of those things, but you've taken it really a step further with the activism, which I think is what we're all here to learn. I'm here to learn how to become a cultural activist, basically. And I know I can learn a lot from John and everyone.
In Paris. She's in Paris, just by the way. People, please identify where you are.
Sorry, I forgot. Okay. I mean, no, but I did earlier in the chat because I was on the metro bus and everything, you know. But I want to say that there's some synchronicity in what we're doing tonight. And if I can share 2 images, you'll see why.
Yes.
And well,
I'll make you a co-host very quickly.
I'll try just to show these 2 images.
Are you going to hold them up?
Well, no, they're on my
No. Hold on. You are now becoming a co-host and you can share.
Let me just see if I can. Yeah, okay, so if I open this, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So I can't ask you to guess what this is because it says what it is. But isn't it completely amazing that Clay created this chalkboard in 1930? And today, if we were to translate this into face recognition, like, you know, whose face would come up, you know, it's really amazing. And I did that by hand as well. I was curious and I tried it in different techniques. But then I decided that I wanted to try and put in opposite colors, like in little dots, the way Yayoi Kusama works. And I decided to ask an AI engine to do it because I didn't have what I needed. And I thought, well, maybe it'd be cool to see if an AI could do it. And then I wasn't really satisfied with the results. So in the end, I just said to the AI, can you give me Paul Klee meets Yayoi Kusama?
Wow.
And I'm going to show you what happened in that one. That's the ending picture, okay?
Oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing, yeah.
Isn't that just amazing on one level, you know?
On one.
Again, these were the alternatives that were generated, but I think that this was really so interesting. And, you know, people from my art class, because I'm part of it, just they freaked out. Oh, what's the place for the artist? And, you know, they're just like really freaked out. But I thought it was so interesting to actually, because as you say, I mean, what was interesting is you can play around with things and you can ask for different things, but one thing the AI can't do is understand what it's doing. So your example of terrorism, or the, you know, and it doesn't understand. If you say, for example, I think just even to chat to GPT, describe what's in front of you, for example, or describe what's behind you, because it's not located in space or sensation or anything. So you don't have all that. So the thing is, I think that it's important because these tools are out there for us to understand their danger, what they can do, not do. We can play with them, but I think that it's important to raise consciousness also about the risks. Yeah, because they are not conscious. And that's an incredible thing. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because it means that listening to you tonight, you know, I was halfway there.
I mean, this is really
ready for all the rest of it, but it's so interesting, so interesting.
And this is a really exciting area, I think, and it's so new, the tools to be able to play with. So a lot of it is experimenting right now, and it is, as you said, that idea that the responses that come back feel so sentient, they feel so human, but as you said, there is no awareness, there's no perception. It's literally placing one word after another based on the most common response.
Yeah, it's words. It's words. That's correct. Yeah,
one after the other. It's actually, there is no consciousness behind it, but it's very easy to be pulled into thinking that it is a sentient being. So it is very important, more and more so, especially for younger generations, to understand, because it's going to become even harder and harder to be able to verify what is the truth. I mean, misinformation is already...
work. That's right. Students work and so on. They can even write theatre sketches. We asked them to. Now, I haven't had the chance to compare them to the ones that my students did, but I have them. They wrote them. They wrote intercultural theatre sketches. So now I'm going to have to analyze them. I haven't looked yet. But, so it's a thing. In the end, our students' homework, or work that they do, how we're going to be sure it's their own. So how do you introduce the personal, the conscious perception that will make it necessary for it not to be the AI that does the work?
Yeah, yes.
Anyway,
we've got to make sure that we don't get to a point where the AI is doing the thinking for us. So, it's important that, students especially retain that, inquisitive nature and wanting to question, and I think the idea of reminding them to question everything. And I know that's part of, myself, my education growing up, and our generation was about questioning the media. And I think we've lost a lot of that these days, where it's becoming more and more important to question what you're seeing, what you're reading, because false information is rife, and it's going to become even more so with AI.
Really difficult. Thank you, though. Thank you. And thank you, John. I mean, honestly, you don't have to. I mean, we're here because of you, right? You and Emily. So, right.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That was incredible. Incredible example.
No, welcome.
The consciousness you were speaking of before, your art. I sent John a video, The Wave Genome. And as I look at your art there, it reminded me of that film. And basically, you're creating a visual reproduction of your own DNA. Really, you don't realize you're doing it, but you are.
Yeah.
A long time ago, the Hopi prophecies from the Hopi Indians in the middle of the country, they prophesied that grandmother spider, we call her Iktomi, would weave her web around the world. Yeah. And we would all begin to be able to communicate with each other instantly.
Wow.
Okay. And so this is happening, and it's happening on a grander level. AI, we are AI, whether we realize it or not. We are AI. We have infinite knowledge available to us through our spiritual connections.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of the prophecy says that the day will come when AI won't matter, because AI is created by man, and it doesn't take into this spiritual separate from the body consciousness, because when we sleep and when we dream, where's our body? It's not there, correct? Yeah. Okay, so we will lose the ability to lie to each other, because we will be able to hear each other's thoughts. So AI can do whatever it wants, the media can do whatever it wants, everybody can do whatever they want, but the day of reckoning is coming where no one can lie to each other anymore, because we will regain our ability to communicate telepathically.
How fast do you want to go, Ron?
It doesn't matter anymore, John. Time is irrelevant. Right now, I like what the one gentleman has to say. One of my favorite speakers. He always said that we're so busy living in yesterday and so worried about tomorrow that we forget to live in today. Alan Watts, and he says that. So I try not to worry about how fast or how slow I'm going anymore, and just worry about living in today. Kristen, if I may, I like your work and your neon lights in front of that mountain, which, by the way, looks like someone laying down in the earth. If you notice, look at it closer.
Yes, it's called the Chief.
Yeah,
Squamish Chief.
But often you look at a scene like that. If your sign wasn't there, you kind of wonder what thought would I have. If I was looking at the same scene. So it's kind of nice that what you portrayed there, it triggers us to think for ourselves of an emotion that you had when you came up with this art that you do. An emotion that you came up with that inspires us to look for that same emotion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome.
And I agree that idea of that. Yeah, the spirit and the consciousness beyond the object and beyond our bodies is really important here as well. And I think that's something that, just that viewing that sign, for example, it takes you beyond that. It takes you beyond yourself. And I think that's part of what we need to do, to get outside of ourselves and outside of our egos and just become, as you said, just like living in the moment, living today, living as part of the environment, rather than trying to impose.
That's I think the biggest fear of society losing their control over us and us wearing their clothes and walking around with Nike on our clothes, and their biggest fear is that we will start to realize that the things that really matter, or what really matters to us, those around us, we care about, those that we meet. It's not so much about what we see on TV anymore. And I think that the governments of the world, right down to the local police departments, are making themselves so irrelevant to our daily lives that we're all starting to be like, I know to stop at a stop sign. I know not to run. I don't need a pirate chasing me around, to take food off my table. And we're all really kind of just stepping away from that. Your art is like this. It's like stepping away from all this, this just chatter and this garbage that's out there, and we're looking more closely for more people like ourselves that are searching for the same things. And, seeing your work, your art, and the way you projected it is very thought-provoking. And it immediately, there's nothing else in my mind at the time, and we need more of this to become the witnesses and the vessels, for what it is we're not seeing. Another one of my favorite authors was Carlos Castaneda, and he was taught about looking in the shadows, and he called it the art of not seeing. So when you look at your scene on the beach, Australia that was, when I look at that, I saw what you wrote there, but immediately my eyes went to the shadows, because that's what we don't normally look at. It's like looking at the stars and not seeing the space around the stars,
It's true.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again.
It's a little sad that we have to make art that wakes us up. It's a little sad. And, it's like, do we really have to be reminded that this is a beautiful day? Yeah, fuck, we do.
Yeah.
And when I was sending cigarette smoke back to cigarette factories, I thought, this is one of the saddest fucking things that a human being can do. But I have to do it.
Yeah.
I have to do it. And I just want to give Margaret a little plug here, because she has a very special project going on in Amsterdam starting in May, where she's offering education and instruction about how art can be used to change society and to recognize and embrace environment. And so if folks know friends in Amsterdam, please refer them to Margaret's course. It's a short course, and let us know if you're curious. We'll help you connect with her. Also, Beggy in Georgia, you do have some questions about creating an cultural activist project, and we're all here, Margaret, Emily, and the team, to help you in Georgia. So we'll talk more about that privately tomorrow. Yeah, Beggy. Okay.
I appreciate it.
So and also, Margaret, thank you for inviting so many of your friends today.
I'm really happy to see Leela here. Leela, can you show your face?
Yeah, and then there's Linda.
Leela is in New York. Linda is here. Barbara is here. Giovanna is a friend of Barbara's. I'm really happy that you all could join.
Mm-hmm. And there's Charles.
Heather, did you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. Really stimulating, Kristin. My head is going ding, 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 ding. I wonder, have you come across a book called Sand Talk by the activist and Aboriginal writer and stirrer up of everything we think we may know called Tyson Yunkaporta?
No, I haven't read it. No.
I am reading the book, and you know what, I've been reading it over a period of time, but I'm just also thinking about what was been saying earlier about how, so what I find really interesting is I really am becoming far more, I'm beginning to feel that Indigenous people, as we know, maybe 3% of the world population yet have custodianship over 25% of land, which is around 80% of biodiversity, where the Western approach just seems to harness extinction, loss, desecration. We're terraforming land right, left, and center. Into, basically it's big grazing pastures. It's either wheat or corn or rice fields, and we're desecrating so much in the process. And I used to think, going back, to the early noughties, that technology was the answer, that it was a matter of carbon tax. It was a matter of, algae farms, and a matter of electric vehicles and solar. And I am moving away from that, because what's beginning to dawn on me, and it's slow, and I'm still feeling my way with it very cautiously and carefully, because I don't want to make assumptions, because I really don't know. But I have an intuition here that Indigenous people are living what I would call the subquantum world, that they're living in a way that is not around classical physics, which is causing massive harm, massive danger through an entropy, through a burn it. But I actually feel what is so exquisite about our world, and what is so mystical and magical and may lead us into this, which is part of our dream world, part of our maybe becoming telepathic, I feel is within the subquantum world. And I feel that the tuning fork is 100% firmly within the hands of Indigenous people who have evolved exquisite way where they are non-hierarchical, lateral, mycorrhizal, very, very lateral within the web, not above, not controlling, within the web, and can feel and read and hear perceptions from a multitude of more than human species. And I feel that working as you were doing with the Squamish community this beautiful day sums it up exquisitely. The piece of work you were doing on the beach about waves, I am interpreting as waves and particles as well, subquantum world moving through. Yes, we have these algorithms, and the powers that will be, the Trumps, the other powers want to hold us horribly in ransom because they want to burn the world. I'll just say it. They are there. If you want, they're there in their hellholes, and they are actively burning the world. If they get back into power, if they win the election, they will completely wipe clean further all of the extraordinary rights and legislations we've put in place. So this is it. So I feel intuitively, and barely able to really speak about it with any sense, that actually I think the subquantum world really holds somewhere that I find really super interesting. And I think Tyson Yunkaporta and other people, Robin Wall Kimmerer for me, really understand that. And I'm sure you were touching on that in your, so yeah, I'm just going to pass that over. It's a blurb.
Yeah. So what's the book called? Sound Bar?
Sand Talk.
Sand Talk.
Yeah, I'll put it in chat. But what is your interest in the subquantum world or in the quantum world?
I mean, yeah, I guess it's, I feel, as you said, we just need, it's about getting away from, the objects around us and getting into that subconscious connection beyond even verbal communication and so on, and the technology and so on. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's where we're all agreeing we need to get to, I guess, beyond the technology, or using the technology to help us move beyond the technology into that world and into that realm where we cannot be imprisoned by it or manipulated by it so much. We need to be able to control it because, as I said, these systems, genetic systems, DNA, subquantum world, it's always been here. We just have lost our connection with, that part of it. But we need to regain it because there's tens of thousands of years of knowledge and understanding and utilization of that we just completely, in the West have completely ignored. And it's like we're starting again from scratch. Oh, let's learn how to do this. Let's learn how we can put some chemicals together to cure cancer. Like, whereas, Indigenous communities have been, as you said, understanding, between amongst each other or with the environment and different species, this understanding and communication developed over thousands and thousands and thousands of thousands of years that we could all be utilizing, but we're not. We're beholden to corporate interests and whatever's going to sell and whatever's hasn't been pushed out of market because it's a competitive threat, for example. As you said, the plan of the capitalist world is to burn this one and go and find another. That's basically where it's at. Whereas we could live in harmony and in symbiosis with the world we are living on, and a lot of our issues would go away immediately.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
If I may offer just real quickly an example, something tangible for every one of us. The moment that we learned to not be offended or allow ourselves to be offended by anything, be it Donald Trump, be it the next door neighbor, your sister, your brother, we all have these things that we let irritate us. The moment that we stop putting fuel on people's fires, adding to their fires and making them into big blazes because all of us are jumping in and throwing more logs, this, that, and there's a big blaze and the whole world, everybody gets consumed by it. The very moment that we stop, we have an aura. All of us have an aura. It's our force field. It's our shield. The moment we stop letting any of that garbage into us anymore, and we watch it go to the ground in front of us where it belongs, you're in the quantum. There you are. The moment that you do not let things affect you no more, even your spouse, your best friend, the moment we learn not to be offended when people speak to us, because they speak to us because they love us. And the moment we allow that love to come through and all the rest of the garbage to stay out, we are in the quantum. We are not, you are there. It's a shining light that just comes across us and it's undeniable. And your life changes from that moment forward, We don't have to associate. Some people we have to be around. We don't like it. But we don't have to allow what they say affect our lives anymore. And my personal favorite, what was taught to me, was that when someone is around us, it is misbehaving, behaving badly, blabbering, gossiping, all this crap. We just say a little prayer for them. We pray that Creator, because we are all creative people. We were created by Creator. Creativity is our life. Mm-hmm. So we create this little prayer for them, and it's an insurance policy. No matter what they say about us, they can never affect us ever again, because we have prayed for them. And this is an introduction to that quantum world, and it's very, very simple. Indigenous people have known this all along. That's why you approach an Indigenous person and you ask them something, they they're quiet for a moment before they speak, because I was taught you have 2 eyes, see things twice, 2 ears to hear things twice, and 1 mouth to speak. So be very, very careful about what you say, that we're not offending someone, that we're not igniting someone else's fire, that we're better off to say nothing if we can't come up with something that doesn't do the other. So,
well,
Ron, to the quantum world, all of us, we're there.
The algorithm is just another expression of the sort of psychological climate environment that we've been generating for centuries, and what the corporate strategy is as well, to pit us against each other, to create the illusion of self-importance, anyway, there's a lot of commentary that I've been making lately, particularly at a university I spoke at 2 weeks ago. I just want to be mindful and respectful that those not in our time zone have joined this Zoom, and perhaps at this time it's like 1 o'clock in the morning for people somewhere, or midnight. And, we're really sorry that you might lose some sleep because you've gotten so excited and animated with the program. I think it might be time to maybe adjourn with love and respect. A few quick things. Heather and Dan were on our show about a year ago. They, among other great works of theirs, they've taken some of the seeds of the 7,000 oaks that Joseph Beuys and company planted with the Free University in Kassel, and they've been replanting these things. That's one of their projects. Babette, you'd be maybe excited to hear about that. And I think maybe Babette was part of that program when Heather and Dan were on our show. Babette, one of her own social sculptures was creating a TV channel for Buddhist themed works in Holland. Extraordinary life achievement, Babette. We are in awe. And everybody here is so powerful. There's Dan. Hi, Dan. Good to see you again. Chow is here from China and now living in Brooklyn, a courageous young filmmaker and activist, worked with Ai Weiwei, on and on and on. So we can't say enough about the extraordinary attention and mind space and the kind of, psychic AI that we're generating here. The tuning fork is not doomed, but we do need funds. We will start a fundraising campaign soon. We want to continue. We want to expand. We want to make it more available to students and other groups around the world. Somehow, we will make this happen. We need everyone's support. Testimonials from people who've been on the show would be helpful, etc. We will reach out to you. Emily, please help us say goodnight and let go of this. Oh, maybe Vera had something else to say?
No, I just wondered whether in Georgia he's actually walking around out there or whether it's a virtual image. I can't help wondering.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, no, actually, I am by the riverside. So yeah, it's real pleasure to join you a bit late. I apologize, but yeah, it's real honor and pleasure always to be with you, John and Emily, and with all of you as well tonight. I just had one question, if that's possible. I don't know if everyone's wrapping up, a real quick one. From what you mentioned, it was really close to home as I come back here and try to get in touch with my indigenous and Aboriginal sort of roots as well. What do you think the AI role would be in the future? Maybe pros and cons, like in positives and negatives that I could think for myself, but I just really would love to know what you think about that. How would that contribute towards the future of Indigenous life as it is, with all its challenges that it faces? But also, of course, let's not forget the positives that you mentioned that it gives us and nurtures us with, right? Which is completely so valuable. So I just want to ask, like, what do you think it could be the pros and cons of AI? What role could it play in the future if it were to be dealt with in a positive light or maybe somewhat in a more negative? Thank you so much.
Kristen, you're going to answer.
Yeah, I can answer. Well,
maybe it's a utopian AI.
yeah. I mean, that's it. We always think of AI because, we're entrained by all the science fiction movies and dystopian movies we've watched that this is where we're heading. But, perhaps there is a way that we can control in a way where it's heading. For example, one of the downsides at the moment is the data that it's pulling from has some inherent biases in it, for example, because it's not fully representative. For example, I think someone asked it, name the most 10 prominent artists of the 20th century, and they were all white males, for example. And then someone prompted and said, well, why didn't you include anyone from Asia or, other, someone from the East or whatever. So, and it said, I'm sorry, and revised its statement. And then another, list of men, and then the person prompted again and said, why are there no females in this list? So we have to sort of make sure that we play a role in, as activists, as the community, to make sure that we sort of iron out these biases and provide as diverse a data set for the AI to generate from initially. That's also an issue with face recognition data as well. The data sets that it was built upon were basically predominantly from white male students at Yale and the universities, and that's why it has a lot of flaws in identifying people of colour, for example, or misidentifying people of colour. So that's a lot of the cons of the technology, but as we said earlier, AI is generated by humans, so we actually have a duty to ensure that it is actually providing a well-rounded and diverse data set to draw upon, because it's only going to build upon that. So if it's building upon biased data, then it's going to become more and more so biased, as we've seen with social media, et cetera.
Kristen, is there a way to create an open source AI where everybody can contribute to its so-called knowledge or intelligence?
I mean, I think that'll come. I think that's part of what will be its evolution, and it will be a necessary part of its evolution. I mean, that's essentially what Wikipedia became.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's definitely going to be really important. For example, like I mentioned earlier, that these endangered languages that will be lost if they're not preserved, and if they're not included in, this AI rush that's happening, because very soon AI is going to be the number one source of information for most people. So we need to ensure that the basis of it is not biased. So yeah, that's where, as humans, we need to collaborate with the AI to ensure that doesn't happen.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you too, Becky. I just want to say hello to Daniel Subkoff, and he's driving around in his car, an extraordinary entertainment feature in the background of it looks like Manhattan. We are going to be also selling some of Daniel's sister, Tara Subkoff's clothing line and fragments of the clothing line, Resurrection, what's called Imitation of Christ. So for those of us who would like to expand our wardrobes and donate clothing that we're not using anymore, we have some new stuff for you. And to support the Institute, and also to support Tara. Tara is an extraordinary cultural activist, as well as being an actress. Anyway, here we are again up at the Institute for Cultural Activism International regional headquarters in the Catskill Mountains, where everyone's invited to come and have residency, join us for retreats, and of course, enjoy. We'll share what we can with you from here if you can't get here. That's the point. Kristen, you're an extraordinary artist and human being. We're very happy to be graced by your work and your being. We hope
Thank
it's been
you.
good for you. We hope it's been good for you tonight.
Well, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I'm inspired by everyone's comments and questions and presence. And thank you so much for inviting me on the show. And thanks for everyone for joining from all around the world. And I look forward to more conversations in the future.
And the link for this show today will be on our website, where the show will be archived and also available on Facebook and YouTube for a while. I think it might be prudent for Emily and I to start charging a little money for people to see the show after, let's say, a month or 6 weeks, where it's available. It will be available for free. Now, these are things we're trying to figure out in the back room with Margaret, and we hope one day we can work together with Kristen and maybe have that seminar about AI, Kristen, and
Definitely.
teach us how to create a whole bunch of 1,000, fake identities together.
Try and break the algorithm, or at least guide it.
Well, the narrative is not owned by the corporate world.
No, it's not.
They've even given us the tools to help create other narratives. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sweet dreams everywhere.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.